Well, guys, it's now time to do a new NFL Theory, as it's been a long time since I've done one of these, and this is a good way to start off with. Something very simple. If I had Vegas Pro working on my computer and all that, instead of relying on CapCut, maybe I'd be more motivated to do an NFL Theory. But this is an easy one that doesn't require much work at all. So, let's get to it. As this is kind of like a sequel to a theory I did several years ago on would Tom Brady ever make the starter job if he was on any of the other teams in 2000 and all the way up to 2002? So here's a new tier list of what if Peyton was drafted by all the other teams, and would he take the starting job, and could he make the team better potentially? That would be an interesting idea. Some I've been thinking about for a while. I worked on this for like a couple months, but I just lost interest in doing all that because I didn't feel like doing all the work over and over again with the slides and all that, figure out each week and all that. It's too much for my brain, especially since I'm working now and I don't have time to do this shit. But thankfully, ChatGPT helped me. I told exactly how I want it figured out all the games. I put in Peyton's game performance, replacing the original QB, and it does all the stuff instantly. So it saved me so much time that I got the rest of it done in one day, instead of taking weeks and weeks of work otherwise. So yeah, let's get to this, shall we? As we're going to go AFC, meaning order of the conference division in order, how they finished in 1998. And of course, even though the Colts and Texans are on this tier list, we're not going to include them there, since why would we have the Colts when that's real life? And Texans didn't exist yet. And of course, the Browns will have a hindrance, because remember, they didn't exist in 1998 yet. Alright, so first off, we'll start off with the Jets. So, of course, in 1998, he wouldn't be the starter. Vinny Testaverde would. So, nothing changed there. They'd still go 12-4 and lose an AFC championship. And Testaverde would start in week 1, but he would suffer his season-ending injury, so Peyton would take over. So, and this was the only one we did where I did the manual slides myself. So, I calculated with Peyton in his place, the Jets would go 10-6, and they would make the playoffs, but they would lose in the divisional round. And then in 2000, with Peyton being the full starter, they would go 12-4, and they would make it all the way to the AFC Championship, where they lose probably to the Ravens. So yeah, not bad. 3 straight win seasons, although most of that had nothing to do with him. So by the tier list I had ChatGPT help me figure out, it'll put the Jets in the A tier, which is legitimate Super Bowl contenders, but not quite elite yet. Almost there. Alright, so next up is the Dolphins, which of course you know is going to be pretty difficult since Marino's there, and obviously they're going to start Marino. Now of course, Peyton would start games that Marino missed with injury and such, but no changes in 1998. They go 10-6, they lose in the divisional round. And in 1999, Marino, of course, misses a couple games, but Peyton comes in, plays for them. Now they go 10-6, which is an improvement from 9-7, but they still lose in the divisional round. But then we get to 2000 with Marino retired. Peyton fully takes over. And the Dolphins, with that elite defense, combined with Peyton's really good season, the Dolphins would go 15-1 and get the number 1 seed. And they actually played the 2000 Ravens, and just like they did in real life in the regular season, they would once again beat them into the playoffs. Peyton would provide just enough offensive power to overcome the mighty Ravens defense, and it would make it all the way to the Super Bowl to face the Giants, where of course pretty much anyone would win that game. So the Dolphins win that, and Peyton gets a Super Bowl ring. First one on this list. So because of that impressive performance, the Dolphins would go in the S tier. Man, those early 2000 teams would set up really well with those elite defenses coming up. Oh boy. And of course, if he kept playing to the mid and late 2000s, the early 2010s with those defenses, oh boy, that would be scary times. Alright, next up is the Bills, of course. So, of course, remember, the Bills in the late 90s had the Doug Flutie, Rob Johnson incident. After debating it with ChatGPT, we decided that Peyton would be the backup, beat out Rob Johnson, but Flutie would still be the starter. Peyton would come in with injuries and all that. But he had no change in 1998, 10-6, losing the wild card. 1999, Flutie still starts all the games. Peyton plays the final game, but again, no changes there, other than Peyton would play in the wild card game against the Titans since the situation in real life. But this time, with Peyton, they would win that game, but they would lose in the divisional round. 2000s when Peyton fully took over, the Bills went 12-4 and won the AFC East, but they would lose in the divisional round. So, very good setup right now, but still not much improvement yet. They don't even make the conference championship, so Bills would go in the B tier, which would be considered strong playoff teams, but not much success just yet. Of course, it's going to be tough for Peyton on the Bills throughout the 2000s. They struggled those years. Then we get to the Patriots, which, of course, you're going to have a tough time beating out Bledsoe, of course. It's going to be funny when we get to 2000 with Brady and Peyton on the same team. But anyways, Bledsoe, of course, would be the starter in 1998. Peyton would play in the games he was injured, which means he would play in the playoff game against the Jaguars. But they go 9-7, miss out on the playoffs. 1999, Bledsoe, remember, had that strong start, and he crapped himself at the end of the year. No changes, 8-8, missed the playoffs. 1999, after debating with ChatGPT, it convinced me that Peyton would be the starter in 2000 instead of Bledsoe. So Peyton takes over. Instead of going 5-11, the Patriots go 9-7 and win the AFC East in a 4-way tie, and they would make it to the divisional round where they would lose to the Raiders. So, yeah. Man, Peyton in the 2000 Patriots, because remember we did a theory on that, is going to be insane and such. But he still kind of was cucked with Bledsoe in this regard, so he would actually go in the C tier, limited. But the future would be bright still. Alright, of course, we skip the Colts, like I said, even though they're in the AFC East. Then we get to the AFC Central with the Jaguars. And yeah, unfortunately, Peyton is not going to beat out Mark Brunell. So, literally, the Jaguars do not change whatsoever. So, where's Jaguars at? They would go into C tier. No changes whatsoever. But the Jaguars were successful in this 3-year gap in 2000. So, they still go there. Then, now the Oilers and Titans. And again, Peyton's not going to beat out Steve McNair. So, no changes there once again. So, the Titans go in the C tier once again. Good start for the AFC Central. But then, oh boy. Oh, no, Steelers. That's right. Steelers are next. Steelers, he would not beat out Cordell Stewart in 1998, so no changes there. In 1999, Cordell would still be the starter, but Peyton would take over in injuries. The Steelers would improve to 7-9, but again, missed the playoffs. Not much change there. But 2000, Peyton would take over. And the Steelers, with that really good defense in 2000 with Peyton, would go 14-2 as they make it to the number 1 seed. And they would hold off the Ravens and everyone else. And they would make the Super Bowl against the Giants. And of course, like we said, they would win that. So yeah, that ends it there for Steelers as they look really good with the 2000s with Peyton. And that would put them in the A category. All right. Very good success. Now we get to the team I was really getting hyped for. The one team I thought, just like with Brady, I thought Peyton would have the most success with. The Ravens. And of course, he would start immediately in 1998. And the Ravens would go 9-7. And they would lose out in the wild card. Then, 1999, because the Ravens defense in 1999 was really good. Just wasn't 2000 elite yet. They just needed a quarterback to get them almost to the playoffs. And Peyton would do just that. Going 12-4 and making the playoffs as a wild card team. And they would go all the way to the Super Bowl where they faced the Rams. But in a close-fought game, the Rams would still hold on to win. Then, in 2000, oh my God. The number 1 defense of all time with Peyton. I think you all know what this means. The Ravens will go all the way undefeated and win the Super Bowl and probably be considered the best team of all time. Yeah, at first I thought there's no way. I thought Peyton probably would have screwed up in one game to keep from a 16-0 stretch, but nope. When you put Peyton in with the replacement quarterbacks, he did enough to get them the wins and not screw up anything. So the Ravens would go 19-0. How about that with Peyton? And yeah, that would put them in the S category. Yeah. I'll still stand by my take that if Peyton and Brady were on the Ravens in 2000s, the Ravens would be the best team for them, which is insane with those defenses. I even told ChatGPT at the end and debated. I think with Peyton, the Ravens would have won 6 Super Bowls in the 2000s. That's how convinced I am. All right, so next up is the Bengals. And of course, oh boy, he'd be a starter immediately, but man, the Bengals were terrible in the 90s. He would improve him to 6-10 in 1998, but missed the playoffs. He would improve him to 9-7 in 1999, but again missed the playoffs. He would get them to 10-6 in 2000, but due to tiebreakers, the Bengals still miss out. So the first team on this list were the Bengals, mean the team do not make the playoffs with Peyton, even though he did improve them. So that will put the Bengals in the D category. Like nothing, like very limited, unfortunately. They'll be interested later on the 2000s when they get a little bit better. Then we get to the Browns, of course. Like I said, they're kind of cucked since they have one less season. So 1999, he immediately takes starter from Tim Couch. He would improve him to 7-9, but missed the playoffs. Then he would improve them to 9-7 in 2000, but again, missed the playoffs. So again, no playoffs, limited success, and one less season. The Browns go into the D category, unfortunately. That's it for the AFC Central. Then we get to the AFC West, and this is going to be interesting, as it's the Broncos. Of course, Elway's a starter in 1998, so Peyton will only play in the 4 games Elway was injured in. And no changes there. They go 14-2, and they win the Super Bowl, so Peyton would get a ring, but as largely a backup, which is kind of, thinking about it. But Elway retires, Peyton takes over in 1999. He gets the Broncos much better. They go 13-3. But they would lose in the AFC Championship, just short. And then in 2000, they would go 13-3 again and get the number 1 seed. But this time they'd run into the 2000 Ravens, and unlike the previous teams with elite defenses, which the Broncos do not have in 2000, the Ravens beat them and go 1-done. So, record-wise, the Broncos probably have the best success of everyone here, and Peyton does get a ring, but he didn't really earn it pretty much as the backup. But this still is a successful team with Peyton. So that will put the Broncos in the A category. Alright, next up is the Seahawks. As I think Peyton would take over the starting job in 1998. They would improve to 10-6, but lose in the wild card round. Then they would go 13-3 with him, and they would make it all the way to the Super Bowl where they lose to the Rams. Then in 2000, they would go 11-5 as a wild card team, but lose in the wild card round. So, good success, made the playoffs every single year, but no Super Bowl win. So, that would actually put them in the A category. Even I think that might be a little high by ChatGPT standards. Alright then, it's the Raiders. He would become the starter immediately, and he would stop Rich Gannon from coming to the Raiders next year. So in 1998, they would go 9-7, make the playoffs, but lose in the wild card round. In 1999, with that good offense they had with Gannon, they would go, I thought it was hard to believe at first, I had to double check this at first. They would go 14-2, number 1 seed and everything, and they would make the Super Bowl, but they would lose to the Rams in a tough one. Then in 2000, this one I thought was really hard to believe, but once we looked at the game results, it was undeniable. In 2000 with Peyton, they would go 16-0, just like the Ravens. And they, of course, would make it, they would just survive the Ravens in the AFC Championship to make the Super Bowl where, of course, they would beat the Giants. So Peyton would get a ring with the Raiders. This situation, stat-wise, the Raiders are actually better than the Ravens since they went 14-2 instead of 12-4 in 1999. So, this is like the top tier team with the Ravens, so they're going to go into the S tier, even though I still find hard to believe he would get them 2 Super Bowl appearances. My goodness, but the stats were just undeniable. I'm not going to deny reality. Then we get to 1999. I'm not the 1999, the Chiefs. He would be the backup for most of the year in 1998, as the Chiefs would go 7-9, miss the playoffs. Then he would become the starter in 1999. He would get them to 13-3, make it to the AFC Championship where they lose. And then in 2000, the Chiefs struggled a bit as they fell off. They went 11-5 and lose in the wildcard round. So, good success, but still kind of limited. So, the Chiefs would go in the B category. Alright, then we get to the Chargers. Ooh, this will be interesting if they had him instead of Ryan Leaf. So, of course, 1998, he would improve them to 8-8, but missed the playoffs. And of course, he would do massively better than Ryan Leaf, who missed all of 1999. He would get them to 11-5 and get them all the way to the AFC Championship, which they lose. But then we get to the interesting one, 2000, because remember, the Chargers in 2000 went 1-15. Peyton would will them to an 8-8 record, which of course still misses the playoffs, but that's still impressive that he made the crappy 2000 Chargers a 500 team. That is insane. But again, not really much success there. And I'm actually going to disagree with ChatGPT in this regard, because it put the Chargers all the way in the B category, which I don't agree with. I think this is probably going to be more of a C tier. I'm going to disagree with it right now because it's still kind of limited, even though he did get them a lot better. All right, that's it for the AFC. Then we get to the NFC, which will be interesting since they could they might have to face the Ravens a lot more in the Super Bowl. So anyways, with the Giants, he would be the starter immediately. In 1998, they would go 9-7, but lose in the division round, basically becoming the Cardinals. Then in 1999, he would get them to 10-6 and make the playoffs, but lose in the divisional round. And then that 2000 team, he would improve from the 13-3, and of course make it all the way to the Super Bowl. But even with a better performance in the Super Bowl, they still couldn't beat the dominant Ravens, so a loss there. So made some good success. But I actually, again, going to disagree with ChatGPT. It put it in the A category. I'm going to put it in the B category because it wasn't quite a lot of success and no Super Bowl win. All right, next up is the Redskins. So, and he would be a starter after week 1 from Gus Frerotte. So he would get them to 8-8. They missed the playoffs still. 1999, a much better season. Be a starter, but still lose in the divisional round. 2000, though, is when it gets wild. With Peyton, with that good defense, they go 14-2, make it all the way to the Super Bowl where they face the Ravens. Now, of course, this is going to be a different game since it's not the Giants. And the Redskins did beat the Ravens, remember, that year. But a hard-fought fight, I still think the Ravens would get it. So, with that, much better success. I think I'll actually agree with it for once and put it in the A category, but just barely. Because, again, no ring, but at least made the Super Bowl. Then we get to the Eagles, of course, immediately starts and will keep them from getting McNabb. He would improve them to 6-10, but missed the playoffs. Then in 1999, he would improve them to 11-5, win the NFC East, but lose in the divisional round. Then 2000 happens, where he would will them to a 15-1 season with that really great defense, make it all the way to the Super Bowl, where again, they have to face the Ravens. And again, hard-fought battle with a better defense, but again, the Ravens were just still too much, so they're going to lose the Super Bowl. And with that, the Eagles will go into A category. Then we get to the Cowboys, and this is going to be a tough one because Troy Aikman's a star, and he played all up to 2000. And there's no way Aikman is going to lose out to Peyton. But Aikman's also injured too, so he would miss a lot of games, and Peyton would come in and try and save the team. So they would go 11-5, losing the wild card. 9-7 in 1999, losing the wild card. 9-7 in 2000, but again, missed the playoffs. So Peyton would largely, though, be pretty limited, unfortunately. So with that, Cowboys would go in the C category. Just wait till 2001 when Aikman retires, then Peyton would finally probably do good. All right, then next up is the Cardinals. He would replace Jake Plummer. So in 1998, they would go 10-6, and they would lose in the division round, just kind of like they did in real life, just with an extra win. Then in 1999, they would go 11-5, win the NFC East, and he would get them all the way to the conference championship, but lose to the Rams. And then in 2000, he would improve them to 9-7, but again, not enough as they missed the playoffs. So, good success, but still not much. No Super Bowl appearance, and that would put them in the B category. Alright, then up as it's the NFC Central now, as we start off with the Vikings. Oh boy, this was actually really interesting. We had to go back and forth a little bit on this, because remember, in 1998, they started off with Brad Johnson, and Randall Cunningham took over. Then Cunningham was the starter in 1999 before he had injured. And of course, they had Culpepper too, but of course, they're not going to get him with Peyton here. So we had to really think about this. Brad Johnson would still start up to week 3 before Cunningham would take over. But upon looking at Randall's stats in 1997, he wasn't that good. So I actually agree with what ChatGPT said and suggested Peyton should become the starter after week 3. So Peyton would take over afterwards. So in 1998, with Peyton playing most of the season, they would regress to 14-2, and again, they would still lose in the NFC Championship, this time at the Falcons. But in 1999, he would get them to another 15-1 season. Unbelievable. But they would lose to the Rams still. Oof. Actually, no, they would lose to the Buccaneers, actually, in the divisional round. That is wild. But no success there as Peyton did not play good. Then in 2000, he would get them to 13-3. And this time, they would beat the Giants in the NFC Championship. Instead of losing to them, they would make the Super Bowl, but again, couldn't beat the Ravens. So again, the Vikings, just like the Broncos earlier, had a lot of success. And unlike with the Broncos, the Vikings, most of this came from Peyton. But no Super Bowl win either. So it kind of limits them. So with that, the Vikings would go in the A category. All right, and next up is the Packers, and yeah, unfortunately, Peyton is not going to be out Brett Favre. He doesn't probably play at all, pretty much. So yeah, no changes at all for the Packers. So that is going to be in the C category, just because the Packers still play good. If they were terrible, I would probably have disagreed with ChatGPT and put them in D. All right, next is the Buccaneers, and this would be interesting, taking over Trent Dilfer, but after debating about it, since he did make the Pro Bowl in 1997, Dilfer would still be the starter in 1998, so no changes there. 1999, he would take over after by week 13, and with the much better quarterback, the Buccaneers would go 12-4, and they would actually beat the Rams in the NFC Championship and make the Super Bowl where they play the Titans, and they win. So Peyton would get them a ring. And then in 2000, with a much better quarterback, they would go 14-2 and make it all the way to the Super Bowl, where, of course, they hosted 20 years earlier. But again, they have to play the Ravens. And again, a very hard-fought game, but the Ravens, again, is still going to be too hard to beat, so they lose that one. But they get a Super Bowl, so that's very good success for the Buccaneers. So actually, that would put them in the A category. 2 Super Bowl appearances and a win, too. Not bad. All right. Then we get to the Lions. Feel bad for Charlie Batch, fellow rookie, gets beaten out by Peyton. Oh, man. So anyways, 1998, he would improve them to 7-9, but missed the playoffs. 1999, he would get them to 12-4 and make the playoffs, but they would lose in the divisional round. Then in 2000, he would get them to 13-3, which would be enough for the number 1 seed, but they'd go one and done in the playoffs. That's unfortunate. So good playoff success, but no Super Bowl appearance, and that would put the Lions in B. All right, then it's the Bears. So with the Bears, he would be the starter immediately, and they wouldn't get Cade McNown, of course. He would get them to 9-7 1998, but losing the wild card. In 1999, I had to be convinced when I looked at the game results, because I didn't believe this at first. With Peyton, the Bears would go 13-3 in 1999, make it all the way to the NFC Championship, but lose to the Rams. Then in 2000, they would regress to 11-5, but again make it all the way to the NFC Championship, where this time they would lose to the Giants. So, man, the Bears will also be a good team, because they had some really good defense in the 2000s, but didn't believe it at first, but the stats just were not undeniable at that point. And with that, the Bears would go in the B category, just falling short of the Super Bowl. Then we finally get to the NFC West. Start off with the Falcons. So, of course, Chris Chandler's the starter, so Peyton plays only when injured. Chandler would be the starter in 1999 until he gets injured. That's when Peyton plays. And then Peyton will finally be the starter by 2000. So, no change in 1998, 14-2, lose the Super Bowl. And then 1999 with Peyton as the backup, they would recover to go 7-9, but of course missed the playoffs. Then in 2000 as a starter, Peyton would get them to 8-8, but no playoff appearance. So it's unfortunate as the Falcons got worse with Peyton as he started playing more. So, that's unfortunate. And their Super Bowl appearance mostly was not because of him. So I actually am going to disagree. I'm actually going to disagree with ChatGPT. It put in C. I'm going to put the Falcons in D, because in the end, when Peyton is the full starter, they didn't make the playoffs. So yeah, I think D's more accurate. Then we get to the 49ers. This is another interesting one. Of course, he doesn't take... Steve Young's still the starter in 1998. He's the starter for the first 3 weeks of 1999 before he had his career-ending injury. So Peyton would take over, and he would stop Jeff Garcia from showing up. So no change in 1998. 12-4 divisional loss. Peyton would get the 49ers to 9-7 in 1999, but missed the playoffs. He would give them the 9-7 again in 2000, but again missed the playoffs. So the team played good, but got worse. I mean, not worse, but they didn't make the playoffs. He did get better, but no playoff appearance. And again, I'm going to still disagree with ChatGPT. It put it in C. I'm going to put him in the D category just because they missed the playoffs. All right, next up is the Saints. He would be the starter immediately. He would get them to 8-8 in 1998, but missed the playoffs. Then he would get them 8-8 again in 1999, but missed the playoffs. Then, 2000, he would explode like the Saints did that year. They would go 12-4 and get the number 2 seed, and they would make it all the way to the NFC Championship, but lose to the Giants. So, nice success, but still kind of limited overall until 2000. So, I'm going to disagree with ChatGPT and put him in C instead of B. Then, we get to the Panthers. Now, in 1998, the Panthers starting quarterback was Kerry Collins until he was cut after week 5. So Peyton would take over after that being started the rest of the way. So in 1998, he would give them the 8-8 but missed the playoffs. 11-5, he would get them into the playoffs, but they would lose in the wild card round. In 2000, he would give them the 10-6, but again, lose in the wild card round of the playoffs. So they did improve. They made the playoffs 2 times, but kind of limited still. So I'm going to put him in the C category. Man, good luck in 2001. And then our final team, probably one of the more interesting teams on this list, the Rams. So, of course, as we all know, 1998, they had nobody. 1999, they brought in Trent Green. He suffered a season-ending injury in the preseason. Kurt Warner comes in and becomes the greatest show on turf. So, in this scenario, of course, with Peyton being the starter, I'm coming in 1998, he would be the starter. So, because of that, the Rams never signed Trent Green. And because Peyton never gets injured, Kurt Warner never starts in 1999. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, ooh, with Peyton, the Rams would be even better with him instead of Kurt Warner. But that is actually not true. In 1999, at least, because remember, in 1999, Kurt Warner was unbelievable as he was 41-13 with touchdowns. 41 touchdowns with 13 picks. Peyton was 26-15. A good year, but nowhere near elite like Kurt Warner. So because of that, even though they have the overall better quarterback career-wise, the Rams in 1999 would go worse because of it. They would do worse with Peyton in 1999 than Kurt Warner. Anyways, in 1998, they would go 8-8 and miss the playoffs. 1999, instead of 13-3, they would go 12-4. And in the conference championship, they would lose to the Buccaneers instead of beating them this time around and miss out on the Super Bowl. The next year, they would go 12-4, which would be good enough for the number 1 seed. But Peyton, of course, not playing as good, they would lose in the divisional round. So, yeah. They got the better quarterback, but they do worse overall. Oh, boy. And 2001 is going to be rough since Peyton had that down year for them. Oh, boy. But later on in the 2000s with Peyton, they'll probably do a lot better. But, yeah, I'll keep them in B category, but they are definitely weaker with Peyton, at least right now, than with Kurt Warner. So there you go. That's my tier list if Peyton was the starter. How quickly we take over and how well would they do with him. D category was the Bengals, Browns, Falcons, and 49ers because, again, no playoffs pretty much when he was the full-time starter, even though he did make the Super Bowl as a backup in 1998. C category. He got him better, but still kind of limited overall in the playoffs. I mean, you had the Packers, the Jaguars, and Titans where he didn't play at all. Cowboys largely didn't play at all. Patriots, he was kind of limited to as well. But the rest of the teams, it was just because they were just so bad, he just got them to, good enough, they make the playoffs, but just don't make a run for it. He didn't make the Super Bowl at all with any of these teams. Oh, actually, no, they made the Super Bowl in 1999 with the Titans. That's true as a backup, but other than that, he didn't do anything. B categories are teams where he made them better, but no Super Bowl win and such, and still kind of limited Super Bowl appearance. Like, made the Super Bowl in 2000 with the Giants, lost that. And that's it. The Giants are the only team he made the Super Bowl with in the B category. The rest were good playoff teams, but just not enough to get to the final game. A categories were teams that he was great with. They got to the Super Bowl or had extreme success, but just not all the way to elite category. Jets, no Super Bowl appearance. Steelers, they win it in 2000. Broncos, they win it, but he's the backup. Made the Super Bowl with the Jets, Seahawks, but don't win it. Redskins lose in 2000. Eagles lose in 2000. Vikings had that extreme success like the Broncos, but no, they did make the Super Bowl in 2000, but don't beat the Ravens. But then we finally get to the A category, where Peyton was elite, and the teams not only won a Super Bowl, a couple of them made the Super Bowl more than once. The Dolphins were the exception, as they only made one Super Bowl, but Peyton was so dominant that got into the S category. The Ravens and Raiders, 2 Super Bowl appearances and winning one of them, and going 19-0 his last year. Oh my gosh. And the Buccaneers making 2 Super Bowl appearances and winning one of them. Oh man, just insane. And yeah, guys, that's my tier list of how I think Peyton would do. It was nice to do an NFL Theory once again. I actually been having ChatGPT make some new theories with me recently the last few days and fix up some of my older ones from like years ago. But the main problem is editing the video together, because I can't use Vegas Pro still. And CapCut is just not really good at editing the video like audio-wise, like adding a commentary and such. So I'm honestly debating maybe sometime in the future, maybe try to do a small theory and do it on OBS, like a slide and such like that, to make it easier for me. I might try it when I get some time in the future and see what happens. Because without Vegas Pro, it's not going to be easy doing these theories, especially long ones. But we'll see. Hopefully we'll get back to them soon. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this interesting scenario, and see you all next time.